Welcome to the Real Room. Thank y'all so much for joining us. Tell a friend to tell a friend, y'all. Tonight is going to be good. It's going to be good. And I say that because I've been studying. Pastor, you on mute. So who the hell overdo?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, what you looking for?
Oh, my music. Okay.
Y'all, Stanley is safe for real. He's over there listening to shout music. And I was like, good night.
I'm sorry, y'all. Yeah, I'm safe for real, y'all. I don't play with God.
Okay, so let's
Never
get
did.
started.
Yes, let's get started. It's
Thank you
Thanksgiving
all.
weekend.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. If you are joining us for the first time, my name is Colanda,
This is Stanley.
and
I'm gonna
welcome to
come up
the
with a
real.
stage name next year.
Oh, I told you it should just be SP2 or something like
Okay,
that.
we'll do that next year.
Welcome to the Real Room. We are talking about difficult conversations 101,
Hmm.
specifically determining when is the best time, especially since we're getting ready to be, all together for the holidays with our family members.
Hmm.
And you've been able to avoid them all year long, but now Auntie showing up this year to the dinner, and you're not gonna be able to avoid it. So I'm gonna let you start, and then I'll jump in.
Like you said, this is the holidays coming up. Thanksgiving is this weekend, and this is a time where families get together, but it's also a time where a lot of stuff gets swept under the rug, a lot of unresolved issues, a lot of hidden beefs with each other, with
Yeah.
cousins, siblings, and all of that. So we kind of just want to encourage everybody on this episode to kind of be willing to open the door to start having those hard conversations. Like, why haven't we talked since the last Thanksgiving? Or, you could be still mad because your cousin talked to somebody that you used to talk to. And you know what I'm saying? Or, you got parents that have probably divorced, people that have lost loved ones. And, it's just a lot of unresolved. And especially in the black community, we'll eat our greens and our dressing and all that, but we will not deal with, we won't have
Yeah.
those difficult conversations. So, yeah, we just going to try to, see how we can open up that door and hopefully start a healing process. Because statistics shows that the holiday season is one of the most depressing
Yeah.
times. Like suicide is at an all-time high around this time of the year. So we're just trying to find ways to make it a little better for folk.
Yeah. Why do you think, like, especially in our culture, and I know there are other cultures too, because I feel like um other close knit cultures, like why do you think like it's so difficult for us to have these conversations?
Because we just don't, we as black people, I will say this. If you grew up in my generation and older, we grew up at the time where it was do as I say, do as you told. This is how it is because it's always been like this. Don't question what we're doing, and you just going on with your life. But we don't realize that during the process of doing that, there's a lot of trauma that people have experienced growing up with that same, with people that had that same mindset. So I think it's now hard for us to have those conversations because you got people that's in their 30s and 40s, but when they get around their parents, they still feel like that 8 and 9 year old kid. So they don't feel like they can speak up or they can talk or they can express themselves or they can say, what they disagree with, what they like and stuff like that. So I think as far as with black people, and not just black people, because it's there's issues in all families, but
Yeah.
I can only speak to what we are closely related to. But
Yeah.
I think a lot of times we don't feel like we can just it's uncomfortable. So we just avoid it because it's an uncomfortable situation to be in, And then when you try to bring it up, you make it that one, I ain't coming up all that. I just came to eat and watch the game. We ain't coming to talk about that. But why not? Why
Yeah.
not talk about it?
Yeah. I think too, because historically African Americans have had like external, I don't want to say haters, but external enemies in
Mm,
different races. It was like the last thing we wanted to do was to be arguing with each other because
this
we
is so
have
true.
a common enemy. And I think that was the reason why a lot of people didn't address certain things. But like you said, this is the time of year where suicidal thoughts and attempts, depression are at an all-time high. There are people who are literally like going to see their therapist more, trying to prepare for the stress or the anxiety of that this season brings. And so we wanted to talk about it. I have some tips. I don't know how many people know this, but I guess my professional career is I'm an HR professional, and it's like my job to have difficult conversations. I absolutely love, this is probably gonna sound bad. I like watching people cringe. I like having these difficult conversations.
So evil.
and
That is so
people
evil.
cringing because they don't know what to say, or they have put on this front, to where they have made it where their employees maybe are having a hard time talking to them. But I feel like when we get in the room together, you met your match. So I want to give you all some of the tools that I usually give leaders when they're trying to have a difficult conversation. So first, I think we need to go spiritually. The Bible tells us that when we have an alt against somebody, it tells us to go to them. That don't work out, you go back and you get somebody else. Stanley over there having a party. You go back and you get somebody else to be your witness. And then if that does not work out, I believe the third thing is you're supposed to take it before some elders. And I know sometimes we don't want to I think sometimes like we don't want to cause the issue. We don't want to bring anything up, but since the Bible specifically gives us a formula for how to do it, I think that lets us know that there were going to be moments where there was going to be tension, there was going to be conflict, and so it gave us a strategy on how to do it. You having a party over there? It's okay.
Yeah, I just had to have a difficult conversation just now. It's that quick.
And see, and if it didn't work out, then you go get somebody else to be a witness. And then isn't the third thing like if it doesn't work out? Okay.
Then you bring them before the church.
Yeah. Have you ever seen anybody bring conflict before the church?
I've seen it happen before. But you don't immediately bring them to the church.
Not literally before the church. Like
yes, I have seen.
Right?
No, I have seen people bring situations in front of the church. Like this is something that's been going on. We've been trying to deal with it. This is where we're at with it, and this is what we're going to have to do with it. So yeah, I have definitely.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I've seen that before. I kind of grew up in old school church a little bit, so
yeah.
It happens. And it's nothing. It's not a form of humiliation or embarrassment, but when it gets to that point, that means that you refuse to work it out throughout the early stages. So at this point, we got to bring you before the church because you wouldn't listen to us when we came to you one-on-one. You didn't listen to us when we brought a witness. You wouldn't listen to us when we got another witness. You wouldn't listen to us when we did it, And so now we got to bring it in front of everybody. So it happens. It definitely happens. A lot of churches still do it.
And we're supposed to be striving to live peaceably, endeavoring to keep that bond of peace.
Oh, I got a question actually. What if I bring up a situation and it's a very sensitive situation, but I don't want to bring it up because I know it'll open up like a Pandora's box for more conflict. Should I bring it up and have a conversation, or should I just kind of be like, I'm gonna let it ride?
I don't think we should ever not have a discussion because we're afraid that it's going to be difficult or that it's going to be uncomfortable. By the topic, we should already expect that it's going to be uncomfortable. Most people don't like to be, I don't want to say confronted, but most people don't like to be addressed with any constructive criticism. So I feel like we can already just expect this is going to be an uncomfortable conversation. But I don't think that's a reason to not have it. Because then what happens is you suppress how you feel. They keep making an error and offending you. They don't know that they're doing it, but you upset with them.
And then one day you'll blow up.
And they be like, oh, what did I do? And then you got like 100 different examples of how they did this thing, but you never even told them that, hey, this is a boundary for me. Yeah. I think a lot of it has to deal with recognizing what our boundaries are before we get into conflict. And that's what happens sometimes. We get into like relationships or friendships and we didn't know certain things were boundaries until conflict came up. I didn't know that I get an attitude when he don't call me back until I got with somebody who didn't call me back. And so now I got an attitude with you. But had I known myself more, I would have known that that was a boundary. I could tell you ahead of time, hey, this is a boundary for me. Now, if you're gonna bring up something difficult, I would say make sure you're working with that person and don't try to like, unless it's a neutral party. I wouldn't try to also include somebody else because then people will be like, "Oh, you're trying to embarrass me? You're trying to shame me?"
Yeah,
I
I
would try to
wouldn't
work
bring
it
it
out with
up
that
like,
person.
especially like with family relationships. I wouldn't bring it up like at the dinner table. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
I would try to
yeah,
go to that person maybe after y'all eat, or or I wouldn't say before you eat because you don't want them
yeah,
to destroy the mood. But after y'all eat and you notice it's kind of like a space there and an opportunity there. Hey, can I talk to you for a second? Pull them to the side and just
yeah,
have a grown up conversation. No screaming, no yelling. Or try to prevent it from getting to that point. And just say, hey, this is why blah 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 blah, or this is why I treat you this type of way because of X, Y, and Z, da da da. Because a lot of people do wrong stuff to people and they're not even aware that what they're doing to a person is wrong.
right, yeah,
So a lot of people are not aware of what they're doing. So I think you should be willing to have that conversation, especially if it's to the point where every time they're around you, it makes you cringe and you feel some type of way. Go ahead and as Iana
had a
Van Zant said,
conversation.
had a conversation, call a thing a thing. Yes, you are my sister, but I hate you. Or yes, you're my brother and I don't like you, and this is why. You know what I'm saying?
Now
So
there's a
deal
way
with
to
it.
say
I think just be straight up with it. That's just
it.
me.
Well, it
Be
depends
open with
on like the outcome you're looking for. So the first thing I would say is if I want to have a difficult conversation with you, I would establish some ground rules. Hey Stanley, there's something that happened the other day, a situation I want to talk to you about. I want to acknowledge that it may be uncomfortable from the beginning, so let's set some ground rules. Let's not raise our voice. Let's agree not to walk away unless we both decide that we want to talk about it later. So I would establish some ground rules first. If that means we don't want anybody else in here with us while we're talking, do that first. So you establish some boundaries, and then I think the part that we miss sometimes is although we're the person who's bringing the issue up, we don't always maybe give that other person an opportunity to respond. So we have to be willing to listen. And this is what I be having this is what I tell employees. And I work in equity and I work with human relations. So I'm always telling people your intentions are great, that you have the best intentions. What matters most is the impact that you made. And a lot of that is we're apologizing for the impact. Like your mama did the best that she could. That was her intention. But you're saying, but the impact of that, you were never home. We didn't ever have a good home cooked meal. Her intention was just provide maybe to work and to have money to pay the bills. But the impact it made on you was that you felt like you raised yourself. Maybe it left you vulnerable to certain things. And so I think when we understand that it's the impact that we are really apologizing for, like, especially if I know you, then I know you had the best intentions, but we're apologizing because my intent was not received well by you. It made a different impact.
but I got a question. What if it's a
Okay.
parent, and what if the child wants to have that conversation with their parent, but the parent don't want to? You know how some of our parents can be.
Yeah.
I don't talk about that.
Yeah.
How do you start dealing with like unlayering those type of issues?
I think we have to be okay, not that I don't have to like I don't need to move I don't need an apology to move forward. So, like having a discussion may help me to understand your side. It may help me to understand your thought process at the time. But I think we have to get away from the place where, like, I need to talk to you about this in order for me to move forward. It shouldn't be
That's a good
like
point.
it shouldn't be predicated on that. So
So
whether
where
your
would you get the
parent wants to
closure from,
talk,
though?
it's gonna have to be a spiritual thing. Or you resolving in yourself that, okay, my parent isn't at a place where they can talk about this.
That's good.
And
I
so
agree with that.
that's your closure. They're not at a place where they can talk about this, maybe because of how they were raised. This is uncomfortable for them. They're not willing to like go to this hard place. And so I have to accept that. And so that's my closure.
hmm That's a good point. I agree with that.
Now it may impact the way your relationship moves forward with them,
Yeah.
but that's the risk.
But you know, though, from I watched how my mom and my aunt, when my granddad was, he passed like 5 years ago, but like when he was towards the end of his life, how they were finally able to have a conversation with him in regards to, some of the things that he did, when they were growing up. And but for all of our lives, my granddad was a part of our life. He was a part of everything we did growing up. And but for my mom and my aunt's life, he left them when they were little girls. So, but we still saw our moms, bring them around Thanksgiving, holidays, Father's Days, Christmas. He was still at the family functions and stuff like that, but they never really got a chance to really have that closure with him to get an understanding of everything to like right when he was on his way out of here. But I'm glad that God did allow him to have that opportunity before he left here. But yeah, and earlier years he didn't want to talk about it. But when he realized his time was up, he was. So they may not be your parents may not want to talk about it right now. But there's going to be a time where they may be opening up to kind of be like, all right, let me just get this off my chest because I'm not taking this to heaven with me. So let me just get this out the way. So
My,
I would say
my,
just be hopeful
yeah,
and
my
optimistic.
grandmother was like that. I would want to know like certain things about her past, just for the sake of knowing family history. And I think we
hmm
have to realize that some things are triggering. Like,
hmm
so the more I tell my story, perhaps the more, if I'm not healed from it, the more traumatized I may become, or I may re-injure
hmm
myself. And so, like, if your mom or dad or grandparent isn't healed from something and you want to discuss it, it's almost like you go into self-preservation mode where I'm going to protect myself and not have this conversation because it's going to it's going to make certain things come up that I'm not ready to discuss or that I'm not willing to discuss, certain emotions I don't want to feel. And so we have to think like that too.
hmm I agree. I agree with that. I agree with that. Yeah, y'all, we got to start. I think we just need to start just being more willing to. We got to be more open on both ends, though.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kids and young adults now, millennials and Gen Zs. This is generation now. We ask a lot of why and why y'all like this or why do y'all do this or and but you got those baby boomers and Gen X, y'all got to be willing to open up now. It's not that they're challenging your authority or they're trying to say you were a bad parent and all of that, but there's some things, nobody's perfect. So there's some concerns that they may have, and it's not to be in a form of disrespect, but it's just to probably help you get a better understanding of who you are as an individual and why you did
Yeah.
what you did. So
Yeah.
I would definitely encourage families to be open and start having conversations, start talking, start opening up.
Yeah.
Stop going to the
That
grave with all this stuff.
that because I said so don't work like it used to work.
No, no, no. Because
So
that pushes people, and I think when you're not willing to have that type of talk, it pushes people further away from you. Because
yeah.
I told somebody the other day, we live in a day and a time throwing hints at folk and hoping that they catch on to your hints, and those days are over. You just got to be black and white, say what you want to
Yeah.
say how you feel, say how you mean, because everybody got things going on in their life, and nobody has time to be trying to figure out, what you got going on, or if you having a bad day and all that. Those days are over. Just be open and say, hey, I didn't like when you X, Y, and Z, or hey, when you did this, it made me feel like that. And then and however they want to receive it, that's on them. But at least be open enough to be willing to express that. Because that's how
Yeah.
you feel. Tell people how you feel.
Yeah. I don't watch it anymore, but I've been seeing this clip circulating on Love and Hip Hop. I don't know if you've seen it when
No, I wasn't looking about.
but it's Lil Scrappy is talking to his
Oh, I know
mom.
what you're talking about. Yeah.
So that clip has been circulating, For those who like Saved and Sanctified like me, you don't really know who Lil Scrappy is.
They know Lil Scrappy
uh,
is.
he is a rapper. Well, I'm gonna say was. I don't really know what he does now,
Yeah,
but
he
he's a rapper.
ain't got no hits.
And he's having a difficult time. Like he talked about how he's trying to break a generational curse. He's married. He's married to the woman who he has his younger children from, and he talks about how he's trying to break a generational curse, but his mom is making it difficult for him. And one day he just kind of like, I guess it became overwhelmed with his story, and he talks about how he grew up in a I think he said like it was a whorehouse. He said his mom
His mom
was
was
a
a
pimp.
prostitute.
He said his mom was a pimp.
That's right. She was a pimp. She used to hire,
Yeah, so he
I
was
can't say
used to
hoes, but she hired them to work for
So
her.
he was used to like prostitutes in and out their house. He was saying that there were times when he had to sleep with his mom in her bed because some stranger basically was in his bedroom, using his bedroom, and people were smoking dope, doing drugs, and all this kind of stuff. And he talks about how it bothers him even as an adult, and how he's having to go through therapy to work through it, and that's a generational curse that he's trying to break. But because this seems like this is the first time he's talked to his mama about it, his mom is almost still like at that place of like her small little boy that she's trying to protect. So his mom is coming in between him and his wife. And so he's had to like distance himself from his mama to preserve his marriage because he wants to break the generational curse. But because they haven't had this conversation, I don't really know if, because he grew up and he became successful, I don't really know if his mom has really taken any thought to how this must have affected him as a child, because he grew up to be Scrappy, somebody who was famous. And so sometimes you can see like the success and say, okay, well, I guess it didn't really like bother you that much. But here's this 40-year-old man like recalling like it was yesterday what it was like growing up in his mom's house. And so I think that's an example of how those things don't just go away, they just grow up with you. And now here Scrappy got this 40-year-old memory that now he's still trying to trying to break through.
Yeah. And who knows, like his mom, I'm sure her intentions probably was never to put him in a situation like that, because she was in survival mode. So she was trying to do what she can to pay bills and survive and stuff like that. So like you said earlier, the intentions may not have been that, but the impact of it, look what it's caused him. He's a 40-year-old man and traumatized. And to be honest, it's a lot of Scrappies out there in the world today. We work with them, we see them in church, we see them everywhere, but you got to be willing to you got to be able to address that stuff and start peeling back the layers of that stuff. Because again, you're going to grow up, it's going to come out one way or another, and you're going to explode, and everybody going to be looking at you like, where this came from? So,
and that's exactly how they was looking at Scrappy. They were at an event and he kind of just like blew up on his mama, and everybody's like,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, and they're crying and everything, but it wasn't the occasion for them to have that conversation. But because apparently they haven't had, taken the time to do it, it came out like in public in front of a lot of people. And so that's one of the other tips when you're having difficult conversations, is trying to control distractors. So like maybe being at an event isn't the best time, or even like maybe at Thanksgiving, going into another bedroom may not even be the best space when people could just walk in on y'all. You may have to plan to like go to lunch or meet for coffee to have a discussion, so that you're able to control the environment, because we don't want an already tense or uncomfortable conversation to be elevated because somebody busts in like, what y'all talking about? Or they, like you have them people who don't read social cues, and they just sitting there listening to y'all conversation. And so try to control that as much as possible.
And I want to say this too, since we at it, before you make a post about it on social media,
oh my God,
at least go to the person and try to have a conversation first. Yeah. I think we're so quick when people make us mad and we get offended, we be so quick to make a post and status and open up the door for other people that don't have nothing to do with what we got going on, and we only doing it to get validation for so people can side with us with our side of the situation. But
Right.
just go to that person and be like, hey, I didn't like. Matter of fact, I had to do that the other day. Somebody had said something to somebody about me, and the person don't even know me. Don't even know me. Don't even know me. I think me and that person only had one conversation, and they made a statement about it, and I had forgot to reach out to them, and I made a post, and the person commented on my post like you hadn't said what you said, and right in the comments I
You
said,
had to go
hey,
and tell
hey
them.
man, yeah, I did right.
You
I
had to
said,
go and
hey man,
tell
I didn't
them
talk
you
to you
are
when
a
you get a
bald
second.
head lie.
Yeah, but I did. I was comments. I was like, hey man, I didn't talk to you when you get a second. So I said, he was like, what's up? So I, sent him another message, and I was like, hey, X, Y, and Z, blah, 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 blah. We don't even know each other, like this and that. So, but I was willing to have that conversation. Now the person told me they was going to respond. They was like, hey, I'll hit you up and we'll talk about it, but they never did. But I did my part. You know what I'm saying? So, but I'm not that type of person to be putting my beef with people on social media and stuff like that. I just believe in going to the source, like Obi said, get it from the horse's mouth. So I think that this generation, especially millennials and Gen Zs, we are so quick to make a status and go back and forth with the person, and then you got all these people looking at the comments, checking in to see what you done said now and this and that, instead of just calling the person or hey, let's meet up and talk, or talking to the person and try to chop this stuff up. Like, stop that, y'all. That's very childish. I believe it's
Yeah,
very childish.
yeah. If we're not mature enough to have a discussion about it, that we have to post it, then I don't think
Yeah,
we
you
should be
just yeah,
sharing
you're
it
childish.
outside of a conversation with a professional. Perhaps we may not
Right.
be ready to have the conversation if we would rather tell strangers. Yeah, and so I mean, it's difficult. It really is. It's a lot of people, even on my job, like trained professionals, leaders are afraid to have difficult conversations, but we can't go through life trying to avoid conversations that are difficult. We just
Mhm.
have to learn some tools. Um,
So, what is your first step? Well, let me ask you this, since you're the professional. What if it's somebody? What if it's an authority figure? Like, if it's your supervisor or if it's your pastor, and this is somebody that you are supposed to follow their leadership. And how do you do it in a way where they won't feel disrespected or belittled or you know?
So I'm gonna always say, whenever if you're coming to a conversation and what you want to get from it is some type of resolution, a solution, then I think you always have to just remain humble. When you are especially speaking to leaders, come from a place of humility, like not like shy, but the place where like, okay, I'm recognizing your authority, so I'm not gonna let offense make me act out of character or like dishonor your authority. So what I normally do with the leader, yeah, I could tell y'all some stories. I've had to tell somebody one time that basically what she did was racist, right? And she was a leader, and so what I do is I ask a lot of questions. So I may say, and I invite myself to a lot of meetings. So I'll say, hey, such and such reached out to me. Do you mind if we chat about it? And I don't. That's all I give them. I just give them a little bit about what it's about.
Hmm.
Don't ever explain in when you're asking for time, because that gives them an opportunity to just respond and say, well, that's not what I meant. But what you want to do is get their undivided attention so that you all can have a dialogue about what was said or what offended you. So whenever you're asking for time, just give them like a hint of what this is about. Um,
Hmm.
so say it's your leader. So say my leader not saying my name right. They keep calling me something else. So I will say, hey, do you have a few minutes? I want to chat with you about something. And I do it in that tone. So then they, keeping it light. And then we get into the meeting and I say, I want us to take a few minutes to go over the correct pronunciation of my name, because I've noticed a few times that you said it incorrectly. And just so
Hmm.
I'm always aware of who you're referring to, you're calling on. Um, let's chat about it. So I try to always keep an upbeat attitude. I'm saying what I mean, but I want to smile when I say it so that it keeps the tone light. But I'm not gonna shy away from what I need to say to you just because you are a leader. So I say still come with humility, but it's the way that you say things. I would keep it I focused. I felt, I believed, I thought, where you're not accusing them of doing anything, because you want to give them a chance to respond, because it's possible that although you thought something, that's not what they meant, that's not what they said, you misunderstood. So always keep it at how you felt. And then at the end you could say, Pastor, I heard you say X, Y, and Z. Is that what you meant? Did I hear you correctly? Or can you say more about that, where you're not necessarily telling them off the bat that, hey, I don't like what you said, or it doesn't become difficult right away, but you're giving them a chance to explain. And sometimes, and the reason why we do that is because we hope people will hear what you're telling them that they said, and they can say, oh, that's not what I meant. Okay, I can see how you can misunderstand that, so that you don't have to say, now what you said was wrong, but repeating what they said to you, or what you heard, or what you were told, and then saying, can you elaborate? Can you tell me more? And then hopefully that clicks that, okay, no wonder you misunderstood me. I didn't say that right.
I get, yeah, and I think a lot of times if we do that, that'll kind of stop this generation from being so sensitive, because you're
Yeah.
willing to have the conversation. You won't get, because a lot of people get sensitive over things that are really just, most cases, a misunderstanding. Some people may say things out of comic, comedic relief, or just out of, that's just probably how they
Yeah.
talk in their generation. But we live in a day now. Everybody, you can't say this word, you can't say that word, you can't talk about this group, you can't say nothing about them people. You know what I'm saying? So I think when we are willing to have more conversations like that, and come in a way where we can address it towards people, it'll help us to not be so sensitive, and
Yeah.
be willing to get an understanding before we get offended.
Yeah.
Ooh, now that's a message.
Yeah.
Get
And
an
offense is a choice. We
understanding.
choose to be offended by certain things.
Hmm.
I think that's why one of the main things is to make sure you establish a rapport with people. So like, if you say something offensive to me, Stanley, because I know, or something that can be seen as offensive because I know you, because we have a rapport, I'm more
Hmm.
likely not to be offended by it because I know you. But like, if I didn't know you, and we didn't work together or whatever, and you said some offensive, then I may choose to be
Hmm.
offended. So I think we also have to look at the rapport that we have with people. Like,
Yeah,
well,
I've actually
Pastor's
had
not
people.
really like that. So Pastor must not be what he meant. I must have heard him wrong.
No, but I've actually had people come and tell me something, and I'm honest enough, I'm human enough to be like, okay, well, I apologize if I offended you, or because I do have a way of being very direct in in my
Yeah.
tone with people. So a lot of people think that, now there are some people I do want to think that I'm like that because keep them out my way, but for most cases, I do, and I try to be very cautious of that. So a person that's very like sensitive or doesn't have a strong personality, they would get easily offended around me. But if they let me know, and I've done it plenty of times, I'll be like, "Oh man, my bad. I apologize. I'm sorry. That's not how I meant it. This is what I meant." I try to kind of make peace with people, but
Yeah.
I get it. But I'm not. And then on the flip side of it, I'm the same way. If somebody says something and it kind of rub me the wrong way, I try to get an understanding, like, okay, what did you mean by when you said that? Like, are you joking, or like are you trying to insinuate something? And try to call that stuff out.
Yeah. Yeah. Get an
But yeah, so
understanding. That's what the
yeah,
Bible
get an
tells us.
understanding.
Get an
Come on,
understanding.
Escape. Get an understanding.
What
Hello,
I
Escape.
need from you is
No, they need an understanding with each other. It make no sense. Three of y'all on the stage and it's four of y'all. Y'all need an understanding with each other.
and it's the
Not
ones
only
who can't sing, but it's okay.
right.
Um,
Anyway, that made
yeah,
me mad.
I think another thing that we have to learn when we're having difficult conversations is that we always want people to agree with us. Like, I want you to
Hmm.
agree that you offended me. And that's not what we should be looking for. What we really want is like validation of our thoughts, of our feelings, or acknowledgement of our feelings. And I think if
Hmm.
we can stop like wanting people to agree that they offended us,
Hmm.
especially if that was not their intention, but they're acknowledging that, okay, I can see how you took that the wrong way, then we should be satisfied with acknowledgement of our feelings, not be like requiring somebody like, so you don't see how you don't see how that was wrong. You don't see how you did it. That's looking for agreement. And I don't have to agree with you because if it was not my intention to offend you, then I'm not going to agree that. Yep. When I said that, I meant to offend you. Now I'm just gonna acknowledge that it was offensive to you. So
no, and be honest. Be honest about it. You know, if it hurt you, if you felt some type of way, be honest with yourself and be like, okay, I don't like I don't like when you do this, or I don't like when you do, like, for instance, when I'm around my family, I don't like my family to call me by my first name. I actually like for them to call me by my family name. I'm not gonna say that on the real room because
oh, I was
that's my
about to say,
family
can
name.
I say
No. Anyway, but if you really know me,
it?
you know. Like, if you call me
You
by
don't
that name,
sound
then
like
we are like mad cool. We are mad cool. But I
you
feel
don't
like I
sound
get
it.
called. Yeah, I get called by my first name for 8 hours a day. Plus, me and my dad have the same name, so it kind of gives me a chance to kind of deviate from getting mixed. You know what I'm saying? So that's just me, though. So I told somebody one day, I was like, "Hey, you don't have to call me Stanley. Like, we're family, we cousins." But I thought you didn't like that. Who told you that I said that I didn't like being called that? Like, I don't care about stuff like that. We family, so. Yeah, I don't. Now we out somewhere in public, and I'm at the White House having dinner with the president. Yeah, please don't do that. But but it took a conversation for us to have. Like, I don't mind that. So yeah, because it was getting on my nerves at one point. I'm like, now wait a minute, am I at work or am I around family members? So just saying.
Yeah. I have a
Yeah.
family
So
name too. I don't know. Maybe they still use my mom and daddy. I know my daddy definitely still uses it. I think my mama
my
sometimes.
mom definitely uses it. So my mom and my dad, they both use it. But like I said, and there are a lot of people outside of my family that know it. But and it's funny because I like answer to they call me right now about it. I'm like, huh? Like, it's instant. But like I said, I tell them, like, we family. Like, y'all ain't gotta. I felt offended because you felt like you had to act like that around me, and we
Yeah.
squashed it. And now
Now you're
everybody
making
cool.
me think I need to go ask my sister. Do I need to call her by her real name? Because I call her T, but
Well, that's
everybody
it's
else
up to
say
her.
Tisha.
I
Now
say
they
Tisha
say
too.
Letitia. Yeah, see, we call her T at home.
That's what I'm
I didn't
saying.
grow up
It's
with
little
her
things
Tisha.
that especially in families, it's just small things like that could fester and become bigger issues.
Yeah,
But if we don't have a
you're
conversation
you're not
about it,
acknowledging me. Yep, you don't
yeah,
see me. It definitely could. Yeah,
yeah. So yeah, we gotta do better. We gotta be willing to talk this stuff out. You see other cultures do it. It's my life, mom. You're running my life.
so I want to leave y'all with some. So I told you I like to ask questions. I don't want to
Hmm.
make any assumptions when I'm having a difficult conversation. I'm going to ask you
Hmm.
questions because I don't want to assume this what you meant, this what you said. So one of the skills is learning how to use questions effectively. So one thing that you could do is use questions to clarify information or comments. So when they're talking, they're explaining their side. Here, some questions you can ask is, can you give me an example of that? So like they say, you always doing X, Y, and Z. Okay, can you give me an example of that? Right. Another question you can ask is, um, okay, how does this differ from, if you need more clarification? Okay, so what I'm doing now, how does that differ from what I've done in the past? Normally, I don't call you back when I'm doing X, Y, and Z. So how does this time I didn't call you back differ from the last time I did it and it was okay? So asking questions, and that also helps you to get clarity. And then again, it helps the other person hear like what they're saying or what their rationale is. That way you may not have to necessarily correct them because it's like, oh, okay, yeah, that don't make sense because I wasn't mad last time you didn't call me, but this time I am. And so let's get to the bottom of why you're really upset that I didn't call you back this time. Make sure that you keep the discussion on target. Like a lot of times Y'all, we be talking about one thing and then it'd be like, and that reminds me, because I hate it when you did the such and such last time. And so one of the things that we could say is, okay, thanks for bringing that up. Where were we? How do we get back on track? Stanley, you is the drinkingest man I have ever met in my life. I just watched you finish a whole bottle and now you don't got enough.
You know what? I don't know what it is about these. They make me thirstier when I drink them.
Yeah, that means don't keep drinking
No, but
them.
like if I was drinking like water or something else, I would have been done. But these make me thirstier. I might need to
Is
sue
it
them.
sugar or something in it?
Ain't no sugar in it. Oh, it say no sugar added, but
No,
it's only 2 grams of sugar in it.
it's making you thirstier. Yeah.
They make me thirsty. I don't know why, because I don't drink Gatorade for obvious reasons. But all right, anyway, go ahead.
So keep the discussions on topic. Ask where were we? Okay. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that. What was the original question? What were we originally talking about? Um, Making sure that you assess and you evaluate information as you go. Sometimes if we having a long discussion, it's gonna be hard for me at the end to say. And in conclusion, what I hear you saying is, but like along the way, making sure that you're getting an
Mhm.
understanding. Asking, okay, so what do you need me to do for this issue? Making sure
Mhm.
along the way you get and if you feel like there are times when you have a better way that they could handle something, don't say, well, in the future, what you should do is, or what you could have did was ask a question. Wouldn't this be a better way if next time you felt like I was taking too long to call you back, that you text me and
Mhm.
say, hey, what are you doing? Wouldn't that be a better way to handle things? And so
Mhm.
um, ask questions. And then another thing is getting an understanding, asking for feedback. Like the whole point of having the conversation is so that we set a boundary and that we don't like break this boundary again. So, what's the first step in this process? What can I do today that lets you know that I've heard you, and that this can be an area where we move forward on? What can I do today? And then what do you feel like the next step would be like? Asking that, and then finally, it has to be a resolution. It has to be some type of conclusion, some type of solution. It doesn't have to be agreement, but just some type of acknowledgement. I used to tell Marcus, okay, I'm probably not going to get it right the next time it happens because I've been doing it like the wrong way, all this time. So the next time it happens, in the moment, let me know. Hey, Kalanda, this is that moment we were talking about. Don't let me keep breaking your boundary or whatever. So we have to also be willing to be vocal about that once we've had the conversation, and somebody needs to be reminded, like, hey, remember we talked about this? This is a boundary for me. So,
That's
but
good.
ask questions. So you're not accusing, you're not threatening, but you're asking questions for clarity, and that gives them an opportunity to respond. So you know exactly, like you said, from the horse's mouth, what they meant, what they think, what they feel like will be a solution. Ask questions. That's basically what I do all day.
That's actually good. I mean, and that could work in all platforms, family,
Yes.
business, church, any platform,
Yep.
um, anywhere. Even if you just met the person, it still works. So I definitely agree with all of
Yep.
those. Yeah, we
Ask
got to stop being so
questions.
scared to just ask questions.
Yep. And
I
be
guess people don't want us
comfortable
to think we're trying to
sitting
be
in the
nosy though.
silence.
Yeah.
But if I'm asking, but people usually like to talk about themselves. So I'm asking you, I don't know, Stanley. The last time you said such and such, I thought that you meant XYZ. Now it may have offended me, but I'm not gonna tell you it offended me. What do you mean by that? Most people don't like enjoy talking about themselves. So if you're asking questions about
Hmm.
what they thought, how they felt, they don't really see it as like suspicious, but it's your way of having a difficult conversation, but really without the
Hmm.
tension. Because I'm gonna just let you
Yeah.
talk.
But though,
Okay.
I remember, yeah, it makes sense because I remember a couple of weeks ago, I was listening to Pastor Scales, and he said a lot of times we get offended about what people did, but we never try to figure out why they did it. Like we
Right.
so focused on the what, we never deal with, we never go back and try to figure out, well, why did it happen? Like, why did they say that? Why did they do that? Why did they treat me like this? And stuff like that. And you'll be surprised at some of the deep rooted things that people are dealing with. And that's just that could be how they raised, that could be all they know.
Yep.
I, I know people that have a bad problem stealing, but they just grew up with the mindset, well, if I ain't got the money to get it, I just take it.
Yeah.
And to be honest, they learned that from their people. I just say that much. You know what I'm saying? So you don't know why people. I mean, and they are good, genuine people, but they just, if they ain't got it, they gonna steal it if
Yeah.
they need it.
Yeah.
But that's just the nature. That's how they was brought up. So
I think that's a good point because it does help us to understand the humanity of a person, which as believers, I think we should want to know that, oh, okay, Stanley just not outright evil. He just thinks that, X, Y, and Z. I think that helps us to see the humanity behind a person
mhm,
before we just like totally write them off. I deal with a lot of that at work with people who maybe they say the wrong thing, to a black employee, or maybe they're not as supportive of like DEI efforts. And then I find out that working here is the first time they work with black people. Like this is the
mhm,
first time they've been in an organization this diverse. So then it's like,
mhm,
okay, no wonder you don't know what to say or how to behave. Like
mhm.
you're having a culture shock right now.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah,
an excuse for their behavior, but it helps me to better understand what I'm dealing with, and that, girl, you don't even need to have high expectations here. Like
yeah.
they're likely to say something offensive because this is a culture shock for them.
And if somebody, oh, this just hit me, because working in corporate America, I deal with this a lot too. But if somebody addresses an issue with you, please don't respond to them being passive aggressive, because I hate that. Well, I'm sorry, sweetie, I didn't mean it like that, honey. Like you might as well not even respond because it's pretty much like you're not really acknowledging what they're saying. You're just trying to butter up your
Condescending.
point. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
condescending. So that's not a conversation. If somebody come to you and be like, I was offended when you did this, so I didn't like you responded in a passive aggressive tone, it's just wrong. Please don't do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Please don't
Well,
do
that's how you feel. I've said this same thing to everybody else, and nobody else was offended but you. Yeah.
that.
That does
I
not even
hate that.
matter. If one person was
No.
offended, it doesn't even matter that everybody else was
Mhm.
not. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Yeah, don't do that, y'all.
Saints
Who
can
put
be.
that big old passage of scripture up there that you just posted? I can't read. I ain't got my
Mrs.
glasses on.
Simon.
Oh
She
no, we ain't reading
said
that. Keep going.
what I said, what she said, asking them what I guess basically what you heard versus maybe what they meant, so that you can get an understanding
Yeah.
of whether it was taken out of context or not. Even
Yeah.
repeating what you heard. Did I hear that right?
Yeah.
So what
I've
I'm
heard
hearing you
people.
say
Yeah.
is,
I've heard messages that could come off sermons and stuff in church that could come up as offensive. And I've known people that go to the pastors afterwards be like, "Hey, what did you mean when you said such and such, or this and that?" Because
yeah,
the Bible tells us, in all thy getting, get an
yeah,
understanding.
that's what it says.
So the Bible tells us that. The Bible also tells us to come down and let us reason together. Don't let the sun go down on our wrath. Stuff like that. So we have a responsibility to avoid offense. So we got to do that in every way possible. So the best way to do it is to
Yeah.
get an understanding.
And if there are people who just continue to want to be offended, then we need to be able to, the Bible tells us to mark them. So I went to the Maverick City concert the other night, and there are people across the street, like basically telling us all that we was worshiping Baal because we was going to listen to Kurt Franklin because of
Mhm.
his thing that he did at the Soul Cypher for some BET Awards.
Oh, when he said a
And
lion and a lamb will bow down or something
he
like that.
said, we'll bow down to the GOAT. WE'LL. But he thinks that the people think that he said that the lion and the lamb will bow down to the GOAT, whoever
Yeah,
that GOAT is. So he went on his social media and like, hey y'all, this is, I forgot what phrase of it's like an English term. Like say it was like a parallel or something like that. He was like, "This not theology." Like it was specifically like
Like an analogy or something.
yeah, like how rappers do,
Yeah.
and they have not been able to let it go, and they have continued to. People have continued to choose to be offended. So my point is, we have to recognize when somebody is just like they're not trying to reach a resolution
Mhm.
or acknowledgement that I have tried to do something to make amends, then we need to mark them
But yeah, and
and
the
to
Bible does
avoid.
say there's a scripture that tells us to avoid foolish babbling. So when people are coming to you and they just want to argue and they just want to ramble, like certain people that be out there with their purple shirts on with the tassels on the bottom, I don't even I avoid them because number one, I really don't be feeling like that. And number two, y'all are trained not to listen to anybody. So
Yeah,
y'all are not even trying to get an understanding from my part and your part. So the best way that I can move forward is to avoid them. You
yeah,
know, it's not saying that I'm ashamed of the gospel and this and that and other, but the Bible says that you wipe it. Jesus said it. If you go to somebody's house and they don't want to receive you, you wipe the dust off your feet and leave.
yeah, that's what he said.
Goodbye. But we so busy trying to prove a point to people and because I'm gonna show them. You ain't gotta show these people nothing.
Yeah,
God can defend himself. We don't need us to do that. So yeah, so we do gotta make sure that when we are having conversations with people that it's not to the point where we like get into arguments and debates and causing more wrath with each other.
yeah,
Like that's when God don't get glorified. Yeah, you're gonna
yeah,
have your disagreements, but like for instance, I'm gonna say this and go. Let's start about Paul and Barnabas were best friends, but they had a disagreement because
yeah.
this man named John Mark went with them, and he really wasn't a big help to them. And Barnabas wanted John Mark to go with them again to another place. Paul was like, no, because the last time we took John Mark, it wasn't no big help. Barnabas said, I want John Mark, and they couldn't get along. And the Bible says the Holy Ghost said, separate yourselves. You go your way, and you go your way. Y'all can't get along. How about y'all go in two different directions? And they did. So sometimes the Lord will do that. So yeah, when it gets to that point where you can never make peace, and
Yeah,
sometimes the Holy Ghost will say, "That's it. Y'all got to go two different directions."
yeah,
But at least try to have a conversation.
yeah.
So yeah,
That's good.
call. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. I said, preach,
Why am I saying?
Stanley.
Who
Stop
said that?
drinking that. So I hope this has been helpful, especially as we're going into the season of being around family members and the cousin who did what, the auntie who said something that we ain't like. Just
Exactly.
being
And we
around,
all got them.
yeah,
Everybody got them messy
being around
family members.
church more. The offensive auntie who always talking about your weight, and this year you had it. Tell her it's a boundary for you.
Exactly. You got that auntie. You ain't married yet. You ain't got
It's a
no girlfriend.
boundary.
You ain't got no
Yeah.
husband yet. Hey, do you?
No, we're gonna
I'm
ask
serious.
questions. Auntie, what do you mean when you're asking me those questions?
Oh God, I'm about to say something. Never mind. I ain't ready for this one. I
Yeah,
gotta relax. Go ahead.
say it, because I'm gonna say this.
I'm
Also,
gonna say this. Go ahead. No, you say your part. Say
all
your
right.
part, because I'm gonna
So
say
my
mine.
last thing is learn to be comfortable in the silence. So Auntie is saying her
Mm,
stuff, and then when you wait for a moment, Auntie, when you're always asking me about when I'm gonna get a man, what do you mean by that? Sit there and don't say anything else. We have to learn to stop filling in the silence and helping people get a response. Let her sit in that uncomfortable silence and let her either have to backtrack what she said or explain what she means when she's telling you to
mm.
always get comfortable in the silence. Okay, that was my last thing.
And my challenge is this year for this Thanksgiving. If you're hanging out with church people more than your own blood family to avoid the conversations with your family, then you need to challenge yourself to break that cycle. Because let me tell you something, at the end of the day, you can change your church friends, but you can never change your family.
Yeah.
So I really want to encourage people, like if you're only going, I'm going to such and such house at the church for Thanksgiving or this and that, try to have those conversations because you can't avoid family. You'll never be able to avoid them. They're gonna be here till the
Yeah.
day you die. I mean, then after they die, they still a part of them is still gonna be with you because y'all share the
Yeah.
same bloodline and DNA. So stop avoiding your family members, have those conversations, hang out with them, talk. you'll be surprised over the stuff that you're mad about that's really not that serious. You'll be very surprised. So yeah, I had those conversations in this holiday season.
Yeah. All hearts and minds clear.
Mine is.
If you have
I'm
any
finna
more
soup body
questions
on.
about this, yeah, I'm happy to because I do this for a living and I like this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So
please reach out to Sister Douglas. Sister Douglas, reach out to Sister
yeah,
Douglas.
I'll give you like some starter questions or something like that to start the conversation. I'm happy to do that. If you have any more questions about how to do this. So
Yeah.
until next time, y'all have a great Thanksgiving. Don't forget to be grateful and do something out of your gratitude for the Lord.
Anybody got some Best Buy Black Friday coupons? Hit me up. Let me know.
Yes.
I can use them.
Yes.
I love Best Buy. Just let you know. So yeah, y'all have a happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah. All right. Until next time. Thank you for tuning into the room. Peace.